Perfect. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us. We can go ahead and kick things off. Welcome to our Ask Me Anything session, focus solely on sales and talking about what sales roles in climate can look like. My name is Natalie Lavery. I'm the marketing lead here at Climate People. If you don't know Climate People, we are a climate recruitment agency and advisory firm that is dedicated to getting as many people working on climate as possible. We operate like a traditional recruitment agency would. We work with any company that is hiring for any climate roles, and then job seekers, many like yourselves, who are looking to get a job in this space, and hopefully pair the two together to get, again, more people working on climate. I'm not a recruiter though. My job is to host resources, to do events like this, and really just inform more people about what climate jobs could really look like and how you could go about getting one. And that's kind of the idea, that is the idea behind these Ask Me Anything sessions. And from my work, I really discovered that it's not that a lot of people don't want to transition their careers to climate. It's kind of that they don't know that climate jobs exist. A lot of times people, when they think of climate jobs, they think of environmentalists and scientists and getting your PhD in science and then going back and applying that to climate. But as I'm sure a lot of you now know, we need millions of people working in this space, and there are climate jobs in every different industries. As long as the company or you are working on something that is advantageous for the climate, then you could be working in a climate job. So again, kind of the rundown on these Ask Me Anything sessions is to bring in professionals like Laurel, who I'll introduce in a second, who have made this transition, who are working at the intersection of climate and their industry or wherever they're working in, and really shed some light to how they got to where they are and some tips and tricks for how you as sales professionals can best transition your careers to get sales jobs in climate. So with that, as I mentioned, I'm super excited to introduce you to Laurel. Laurel is an account executive at Rubicon. I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more because she can obviously do that better than I can. But quick rundown on today is going to be, I'll ask Laurel 20 or so minutes of questions. Her and I are just going to have a conversation about some of the points that I know that she did really well to get a job in this space and give some flavor. And then we'll open the door to all of you for around 30 minutes to ask any questions you have. So while Laurel and I are having this kind of back and forth, think of questions. So you can write them down. You can drop them in the chat. I'll take note of that. But think of questions that you'll have for her, and then we'll have 30 minutes so you can pick her brain. So with that, we can go ahead and kick it off. And Laurel, do you want to quickly introduce yourself a little bit better than what I just did?
Oh, that was great. Thank you. It's nice to meet everyone, and thank you for having me, Natalie, and Climate People, and really, really understand the position that many of you may or may not be in right now, just related to looking at how to transition into a sales role. Um, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Laurel. I'm based in Philly. I used to live in New York too, and um, from this Philly area. And right now, I work at Rubicon, and I'm an account exec, and we sell software to municipalities and probably private sector clients as well that have what we call heavy duty fleets. And really all that is like big vehicles that are doing services that we take for granted every day, right? Solid waste collection, snow plowing, and street sweeping, keeping our roadways clean, safe, and obviously our communities healthy. So our software basically drives efficiencies for those clients that we have, whether they're public sector or private sector, and helps makes their jobs easier, save taxpayer dollars, has a benefit to the environment because we have an opportunity to reduce fuel costs, methane gas, all those sorts of KPIs, right, that come along with um, any sort of operation like this. Save time, and save time is save resources is a climate impact. I mean, there's so much that can be a climate job, right? So before that, before this, I have worked in sales before at a tech company. I was selling tech to tech people. So tech that helped back end tech people do their jobs better. The company is Elastic. Um, they're in like every industry. They touch like every industry. And before that, I was in entertainment. I had like a totally different path going. I thought I was going to produce movies. So I've transitioned quite a few times, and I'm no stranger to how hard that is, like from an emotional standpoint, um, just from all standpoints, financial, like every standpoint. I try to be very real about it and not sugarcoat it. I'm human just like all of you, and I'm sure you guys are each going through your own individual journeys right now. So really, really looking forward to this chat. And I guess the only thing I would add to humanize me a little more is that when I'm not working, I love to eat, travel, do hot yoga, spend time in nature, and one day would really like to devote more time to learning Spanish. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I got Duolingo too, and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I was going strong for like a month, and then dropped off. So that's awesome. That's so cool. Thank you for that background and that context. I think it really helps paint the picture for like what even a sales job is, and especially your comment on like time and capacity. That is a climate solution, and I think really, especially for sales roles, and I'd love your opinion on this too, is you kind of have to look at it from a full lens, like what is a sales job in climate? What does that mean to you? Is it working at a software company that is working on a climate solution? Can you have a sales job within a bigger company if you're part of like the green employee resource group? And so yeah, I guess my question for you, Laurel, is what's a sales job in climate? What does that kind of mean, and how do you kind of fit into that a little bit more?
Yeah, you touched on it. It could be hardware company, it could be a software company, it could be a mixture of both. Some solutions out there are, especially in like the vehicle and fleet space, which is a space that not everyone thinks about, the transportation sector. Um, I think, right, I think for where each of you are now, thinking about if I'm in software, if I'm in hardware, do I want to stay in that? Because like your transition might be easier if you stick to that path. Like so if I'm coming from like well I'll just use my example. I came from Elastic. Elastic was a software. So naturally I thought, okay, are there climate software companies out there? And I found a bunch, and they're in all kinds of different sectors, right? They're in um, carbon accounting. I mean, that's one of the main, I feel like, software companies in the space. It's like there's so many, it's a pretty dense like market, that market. I mean, there's like everything from like the watersheds and the Persephones all the way down to like the more mom and pop small business designed to be, sort of like a calculator of sorts, and maybe some BI tools for a smaller company to do like their carbon footprint or their net zero pathway. All the way to like I remember talking to companies like Waterplan that were like driving people to think about the cost for water as, rather than a free resource, but as a resource that's super valuable, limited, diminishing in availability on our planet, right? Fresh water, and all the way to companies. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like, so there's a lot of different companies out there in different sectors. And I think if you are in sales, you could be in sales as like where I am, where you're just directly like field selling and you're selling the product. You could be in sales ops, which is like a sales support role, and you maybe like are doing strategy or like um, building a sales ops program, doing enablement. And that can look different at a hardware company. I haven't worked at really like a hardware company, so I might not be speaking to your experience exactly. Um, Beyond that, what you said, Natalie, and just to kind of like wrap this question up, I guess, is you can be at a company doing sales, and maybe you're not like so jolted every morning waking up by what you're selling, but if you're in like some sort of like employee resource group, that's still a really good place to be able to say, like, how can we be more green at our company? How can we be more environmentally conscious when we do like events, like marketing events? Like, do we want zero waste goodie or goodies isn't the right word, like takeaways? Like, do we want to get like a zero waste marketing booth, or do we want like sales marketing booths at our events? Or there's like different ways to, I think, be in sales and climate, but those are some of the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, definitely. And when you were hitting on kind of the transferable skills and deciding, like, okay, I'm in this other industry, I want to go into climate, like, what is my best shot? I think the way you articulated that is incredibly helpful. And that's something that we see at Climate People all the time is the people who have the best luck getting a job in climate is when they limit the number of variables in their search. And it makes, I mean, when you think about it, it's pretty intuitive. It's if I worked as a SaaS salesperson at a big tech company. If I'm looking at larger tech SaaS climate companies, my skills are going to be more transferable. Whereas if I was in product and I'm trying to switch to sales and I'm switching from software to hardware and all of that, you just don't have as many of the transferable skills. So I think that's a great piece of advice, Laurel, is to limit the variables and try to draw those parallels because switching industries in essence isn't that different. And I would love to hear your experience with that, Laurel. How was it? What parts of your day-to-day job are starkly different going from Elastic to Rubicon? Is there anything that's like inherently different? Are there some things that are similar? Can you just kind of touch on how your job really changed when you went into climate?
Yeah, there's like two parts that come to mind to answer that. I think the first part is just the transition itself, and then there's like the day to day, right? So the transition itself was brutal. It was hard. And I think it was because of my like where I was at in my career, like just like how long I'd been working and like a couple other factors. Like I graduated right before COVID, and then COVID like impacted my first job. And so like I kind of just part of that like wave of people that was just unlucky, and like pandemic and then tech layoffs and like all these other things. So it was a it was a a super it was an opportunity to sell myself as well as sell myself as a salesperson, and like a one that can step up to the plate. Um Transition was just also hard because as and just to kind of take what we just talked about and answer your next question, when you limit the variables and you have that direction out, like you say this is like the easiest path for me to get a job and transition to climate. You tell people what you're looking for. Like you say, I'm looking for a climate SaaS sales job. They look at you like, what? That's so specific. And like that was my experience last year. I mean, especially at like family friends that didn't even know like what greenhouse gases are or something. But so it's like you're looking for something really specific. And so while it's an easier transition, it's definitely a more niche, search and targeted, and there are less opportunities, and so it is harder. And that's why I'm saying brutal. It was hard for a number of reasons for me. Um, to answer your second question, day to day, difference wise, in this industry versus the previous, think just like getting the lingo for like I talk to men most of the time that are managing public works operations, solid waste operations at cities. That's like the main person I'm talking to typically. And so kind of leveling with them, you know, showing that I know what I'm talking about, showing that I know industry issues or industry problems, common pain points. It's kind of the same in a sense, though. It's like learning the lingo, learning the product market fit, learning the challenges that your prospects have. What is the value of the product that you're selling to address their challenges? Can we solve their problems? It's like a lot of the same, and then when it comes to SaaS sales, it's like the SDR to AE relationship stuff, like the sales forecast calls, like all of that's the same in a way. Maybe it's just different because it's a different company, but it's pretty much the same. And it's just, I think, the transition with the industry language and all that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that's not siloed to climate. People switch industries all the time, and you're going from health care to, I don't know, utilities, something like that. You're going to have to learn new lingo. You're going to have to kind of learn on the spot and pick all that up. So, yeah, I definitely think that that's probably not something that's just siloed to climate. It's kind of everywhere, but it's also not a disqualifier. Like, I would argue that a lot of people that they're hiring at Rubicon don't have that previous knowledge, and it's something that you learn. And I'm assuming that in your interviews that you really sold that ability to pick things up, to learn new industries and all of that. And I'm sure that was super helpful for you. Kind of along that same vein of thought, one of the main reason that I wanted to bring Laurel on today to talk about this is because how she went about her job search. I think it was incredible. And I think she did a really, really good job of creating a brand for herself and meeting people and being really intentional about who she talked to and where she applied and all of that. So I do want to open the floor to questions soon, but before we do that, Laurel, I would love if you could kind of just talk us through your approach for how you went about your job search, how you went through networking, and kind of how you eventually landed this job, and some of the top takeaways that you had from going about that networking centric job search.
Yeah, I feel like I could do a 20 minutes alone on this just because it was like a good portion of my life last year, like 9 months out of the year, I think I was doing this. So I'll condense it into a digestible answer. Um, Once I started getting conversations in with people. So, okay, let me back up. One of the things I realized is that I needed to network, right? We all need to network when we transition into a new industry, but this networking I had to start from scratch. I knew no one in December of 2022 in the industry. No one. So it was a lot of like, sorry, I have something mad. There was a lot of like cold outreach, like LinkedIn connection requests with messages, personalized notes, cold emails, to get people to talk to me, like similar to how we do this, prospecting game, right, in sales. So use those skill sets to get the conversation started. Once I got those conversations going, I was asking questions like, how do you like this company, this job, blah, blah, blah. Then I started keeping a list of everyone that I had spoken with, like what the notes were. And I tried to make like every couple of calls a call that I could get connected to someone else. Because not every call is going to be like that. Like sometimes you just meet someone and you speak once and it's really helpful, but there's not really like someone that they've thought of to connect you with, or there's not really like a jumping off point. So fine. But the more calls, the better. And I have a few friends actually that they're like anti LinkedIn, anti networking. Like this stuff scares the hell out of them. And they're like not into it at all. And they've had to like job search. And so I've said, like, okay, if you're not really comfortable with this, first of all, sales, I feel like this is sales, but part of sales. But the other piece is if you're not really in sales, but you're just switching industries, maybe just meet with like one new person a week. Especially if you're not working currently, you have a lot more time and you can meet with people, like you can be bending around their schedule. So the networking, I was really diligent about getting these calls set up and like to the max. Like I was getting these calls set up to the point where I was like, it was like flowing. It was like I like had a pipeline of these calls. And eventually I had like a long list and I was like keeping people posted like, thank you so much for this call that we had. This came out of it, or I took your advice and I did this that you said to do. And like, hope you're doing well, like blah, blah, blah. Keeping in touch quarterly, maybe with some of these people. What happened was months into my job search, someone told me about Rubicon. And I had never actually, there's a couple things called Rubicon. There's a Jeep, I think, model called Rubicon. So I'm like, okay, what's Rubicon? Like, what is this solid waste company doing? And I noticed on LinkedIn that someone at my from my high school was working in the C-suite. And I was like, perfect. Like I had to do like a little email to them, like get a conversation started, right? Luckily got a conversation started, but they weren't hiring. Okay, so I still like built, a relationship with this person, showed them at this point, months into my job search, not only the networking that I was doing and how I was tracking it, how diligent I was and serious I was about the transition, but into the industry, but also like the job application side and how many jobs I'd applied to and what types of companies and just kind of like the whole gamut was organized in Notion. And then when Rubicon opened up a role, because they were expanding their software sales force, if you will, I was able to put my name in the hat. Like I was someone that they thought of. I followed up when they told me to. It was like 2 months after that initial call. So if you can imagine just like the time that passes. And I interviewed at over 30 companies. I had to be over 100 conversations with people separate from interviewing, like just networking calls and also like in-person events like Women in Climate or Climate Work on Climate, MCJ. Like there's a lot of Slack groups. Not every conversation was actually a conversation. Sometimes they were just like LinkedIn exchanges. Someone would say, I don't have time to talk to you, but here's like a couple of resources that may help based on what you're telling me. And then I was able to interview for this job. And then I was able to get this job. And again, this was like months and months and months and months into the search. So it was really a grind. And all the while, this is the last thing I'll add because I think this answer has gone on for so long and apologies there. But all the while, I was posting on LinkedIn. I was sharing my experience. Sometimes there would be a disgruntled post, but I would try to make it productive. The other times it would be like a post that's like, this is, the event I just went to, it was really fun and I had a good time. And sometimes it was a post sharing another success story from a fellow job seeker. And that's the last part I really actually this is the last thing on this is like I built a network of fellow job seekers. So while you might think like that's my competition, think about it different. Like think about it as these are my fellow cheerleaders. Like we're all in the same boat. We're also probably not truly all competing. Like there might be other sales professionals, but maybe they're looking for something like carbon removal. And I don't want to work in carbon removal, but I want to work in transportation or agriculture or something else, right? So just find your people, find your network, find someone looking for a marketing job. If you're looking for a sales job, like exchange resources and celebrate each other's successes. I still speak with and keep up with people that I was meeting that were fellow job seekers. So a lot of different pieces there, but stay organized, use it like Notion, keep in touch with the people that you meet and build your brand, build your network, share your experience throughout the job search.
Yeah. Yeah, that was all great. And I think you really touched on a lot of the common mistakes that a lot of people make when they're looking for a job in climate. One is not prioritizing networking, and especially for a role like sales is how can you convey that you're going to be good at this role if you're not having these conversations, if you're not pitching yourself, if you're not selling yourself to these companies. So yeah, definitely. And then being organized, I'd say the second major mistake that I see people do is they have a 30-minute coffee chat with someone and then they let that connection die and they don't foster it for a year. And then it comes time to apply to a job at that person's company and they don't even remember who you are. So being diligent, tracking it, making sure that you're following up with those connections, even if it's a simple, like you said, LinkedIn message, like, hey, hope you're doing well. I came across this article. I thought you'd appreciate it. It can be super simple if you keep track of kind of those conversations. So yeah, really appreciate that. And I know that your tactic works. It seems exhaustive, but like that is how you're going to get a job in climate, especially for these more supporting roles where a lot of times these jobs aren't posted. You're having these conversations, you're selling your abilities. So yeah, definitely. We have a few questions in the chat that I can read off to you, but just a reminder to everyone else, we are opening the floor now to questions. So if you want to ask Laurel a question, you can put your hand up. If you click on the reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom panel, you can raise your hand and then I'll call on you and I can unmute and you can ask your question. Or if you'd rather drop them in the chat, that's perfectly okay too. Cool. So with that, Stanley asked in the chat, Laurel, how did you pick the target industries or companies or personnel that you wanted to network with? Kind of where did you start and how did you choose that?
Yeah, I was actually pretty overwhelmed when I first was transitioning or like researching the transition itself about how many different industries within climate there seemed to be. And then, um, so how did I pick them? Honestly, at first I was a little bit more wide than I should have been. Well, I was still kind of like figuring it out. I mean, no one's perfect, right? So like I had a pretty wide target. I was like, really anything, like anything's fine with me. And then was having these conversations and it was clear that maybe I should be focusing on a couple. Like, what am I actually interested in? And so I figured like, it actually solid waste like wasn't something that I was thinking about, but waste is a huge opportunity. There's so much, and that's actually a really vague term. I feel like we think of waste as like a black box, but so much happens when we throw, as we know, no, so much happens when we throw out things. There's a lot that goes on. There's like the landfill side, there's like the routing, there's like the vehicles, there's like so much in the waste space, so much opportunity. So, um, I just was essentially picking maybe a top five. There are a couple of really good Medium articles on this, on like how to narrow down um, industries within climate based on research. I'm pretty sure there's like a couple of venture capital companies as well that do I'm not saying I'm pretty sure. I know there are companies that track, I think CTVC comes to mind. So I remember reading an article from them and they do reporting, climate tech venture capital by Sightline Climate. They have tons of insights and research. So if you use some of those resources, like how is the market, what industries are seeming to be hiring, that could help too. And did I answer that question fully?
Yeah, basically just how did you choose? Like how did you narrow down? Like there's a lot of noise in climate. So how did you decide that waste was going to be something you wanted to do? So yeah, I just dropped a link to the accelerators that Laura was talking about too. And yeah, I created a presentation I did last week for or 2 weeks ago for Climate Career Week. I'll drop a link to that too, but it's basically all on that. Like how do you niche down? How do you narrow down? Project Drawdown also has a list of all these different climate solutions. So reading through those. And I mean, I would love your opinion on this, but I'd say, Laurel, that what I did was kind of went really broad at first. And it kind of seems that you did the same thing as, all right, I just discovered climate. I just discovered that there's sales jobs. Let me learn as much as I can about all these different solutions. And then from my networking conversations, from my learnings, I was able to be like, okay, I like this. I like this. I like this. And then kind of seeing from their opportunities. I feel like a lot of this advice can kind of seem like, okay, I just got this information and now I need to log off and I need to pinpoint my climate solutions. And as Laura alluded to, this was a really long process for her. And completely understand that for some people, like you can't have that long of a job search. Like you need to get in a job right now. That's totally okay. But like it's a process. And I always say that like if you're having a hard time finding this specific dream climate job, like it is okay to get a job at another tech company while you continue to narrow your focus and figure out where you want to be. It doesn't have to happen overnight. It is a process. As Laurel said, it was grueling and yeah, I think it is. It's a new industry. There's a lot of nascent things that are changing. And so yeah, definitely hard to keep your head up, but is important to kind of remain resilient and still have those conversations, still make those LinkedIn posts, even if you're struggling, trying to find some optimism in it. So yeah, and hopefully like events like this, meeting people like Laurel, seeing people who have done it successfully can be inspirational, and you can learn from them, learn from their mistakes, and hopefully make your journey a little bit easier than maybe what they kind of went through.
Yeah, and not to be corny, but like I welcome everyone to like buddy up and find someone from this webinar attending and like schedule a coffee chat. Schedule a, virtual, even a 15 minutes, like what are you looking for? What are you looking for? Like what's your transition looking like? How's yours going? How long has it been? Like can we help each other? Like maybe I spoke to someone that would help you. Maybe I spoke to someone that will help you. Like come together and like network out of this event alone can help you possibly find an opportunity or even a good person to speak with.
Yeah, that's a great idea. If everyone wants to drop their LinkedIn profiles, I can put together a list and send it out in the follow-up email too. So if you want to connect, drop your LinkedIn, I'll put it in a form, and then we can send it out to everyone else so that you can leave here with your first networking call set up. Cool. Oh,
1,000 calls set up, depending
yes.
on how much you.
Exactly. Cool. And then, Laura, I know you touched on this a little bit, but next question was, did you use Notion or Google Sheets or Salesforce to keep notes? I know you said Notion, but maybe add a little bit more context to like what you were recording, what notes you were taking, kind of what metrics were helpful for you when you were going back, if you set follow-up reminders, anything like that.
No, I actually wish I had like a more proactive system. I don't know if they even make like a ideal job seekers like um system like that.
Yeah.
But like that it would remind you to do things. I don't know. But I was using Notion, and KPIs or things I was keeping track of were like for each company, what stage was I in that process of like had I not started the application? Was I um speaking with the recruiter? Was I speaking with the hiring manager? Was I nearing the end? Was I at the assignment stage? Have I not heard back? Did I get denied? I'm looking at it right now. Were they just not hiring? Um, or did they tell me that there might be um yeah, like whatever the status was. I mean, and then like what the role was, if someone referred me to that role or company, when I applied, what did I get feedback in the interview process? Was there or how many interviews at that company did I do? And in some cases, one time or two or three times, I had 6 and 7 interviews. And now whether it was like not my choice to work there or whether it was not their choice for me to work there at the end of it all, like sometimes it was 6 and 7. So that's like on the job application front, but on like the networking front, who was I speaking with? Oops, wait. Who was I speaking with? Where did they work? Obviously, the notes from the call. What do they do? When was our last conversation? Did I send a thank you note? When was the last time I updated them? Even if we spoke in April, but I updated them in June. Um, yeah. And then there were some other like tables I made, but like on like maybe companies to look at or, courses to look at or resources.
Definitely.
Like like some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the key that I'm taking away from that is like it's not really the system that you have. Like, sure, if you have a nice organized system, that could be great, but like the key is taking notes. Like when you're having so many networking conversations, when you're having so many interviews, they blend together. Like inevitably, no matter how good your memory is, they're gonna blend together. And it's super easy just to like when you log off of a call, whether it's an interview or a network conversation, just like take notes on what you have talked about, who they are, what they said they could do. And then when you're going back, it is way easier to be like, oh, they mentioned that they're interested in wastewater. So I just came across this article. So now I'm going to like send it to them, whereas you maybe wouldn't have remembered. I did drop a link to a networking tracking template that I put together. not for interviews, but I mean, you probably could just track your interviews in there too. It's a Notion template. It has a reminder on there. So, like, if you have not talked to them in 3 months, or if you have not updated the tracker in 3 months, it'll just give you a email that reminds you to reach out to them. So, I would recommend checking that out. And but again, I think really the key here is make sure that you're writing down so that you can remember sending that thank you. And then I would say, like, my favorite networking tip is just ending every call with, like, who else in your network do you recommend that I talk to? Then you talk to them, and then you can message the first person and say, I just met with so and so, and they gave me this great advice. Thank you for the introduction. And then you're having more conversations. I will let you ask your question in 1 second, Rashika, but I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name too. But the last thing that I will say is, like, I'd say a lot of people, when they think of networking conversations or networking, they think of exhaustive 30-minute calls. And sure, but like what Laurel was hinting to earlier, it can be a LinkedIn exchange. It doesn't have to be a coffee chat. It could just be like, hey, I love the work that you're doing. Send them a few messages on LinkedIn, and like that still counts as networking. So do what works for you, but just make sure you're putting yourself out there. Cool. Varshika, you want to ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Natalie. Firstly, thanks, Lauren, for being so transparent about your job searches and your experience. It's really inspiring. My question is, how did you go about finding the job using the title? Because I know in sales or in other field, the titles can differ a lot. So how did you go about that? Were you reading job descriptions for every job posting, or how did you target? Because I know you can also target using the job titles, but if they are different, it can be harder to do so. So what are your experiences in that?
That's a great question. From my experience, because I came from the software sales world prior, I knew some of the common titles in that niche software sales. So it would be like if it's business development rep or sales development rep, maybe inside sales rep, maybe account exec or account manager, um, or sales manager or partnerships manager can sometimes mean sales. It can sometimes mean partnership. So that would be like my background, but like I know at probably a hardware company or like it might sound or look different. So I just kind of would like rotate through like the titles I was looking for. And does that answer your question?
It did, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that I would maybe add to that too is like going back to like the skills that we were talking about. So like if the job title is different and you're having a hard time finding it, like LinkedIn's interface works that you can search skills. You can search for different things. Climate based. I'm not sure if y'all are using climate based, but like you can look up, like, I don't know, what would be an example of like a good like tangible like sales skill, Laurel?
Maybe like this, like using Salesforce or using a HubSpot or using a CRM tool or
Mhm.
having cold calling skill or just some sort of or negotiation or
Yeah.
account management can be a skill. Like so using skills like that for sales could work too.
Yeah. So like searching that into like any of these job boards or databases or bringing those up in conversations, like that's going to lend you to that. And then talking to people, like finding people who are in those jobs that you're aspiring to be in and looking at their job titles, asking them, because this changes a lot. It's going to be very different per industry. So don't get scared of not knowing, but like having those conversations, looking at those job boards, and then you'll kind of be able to and write it down again. It's going to blend together. So like take note of some of the different job titles that you're seeing. Cool. The next question that we have, Laurel, is let me pull it up. What topics do you suggest that you should post on LinkedIn? So, like, say you have a job right now and you don't want to, this is a question I get asked so much, but like, you don't want to make it super obvious that you're looking for a job. How do you post on LinkedIn? We'll take it one step further. Like, how do you network? How do you do these things when you currently are employed? Do you have any insights there?
Yeah, on okay. So like if I was not trying to show my network at work that I was like looking for a job, I'm thinking through this now. I'd probably use some of the climate online communities more so. So like there are like I'm just gonna go with women in climate because I use them the most. But they like there's an online Slack community and it's huge and there's like different channels and there's like an introductions channel and then there's like a channel for where you live, like if it's a major city or nearby major city. So you can like introduce yourself, what you're looking for, what your background is, etc. in those kinds of chat forums. So like that it's not so obvious on your LinkedIn, but then you can include your LinkedIn and like connect with people on LinkedIn from these Slack groups. That's one way in thinking that I would do it. Another way, in-person events, because then you can kind of just put like, oh, I went to this event and met these great people, and here's a photo, and looking forward to the next one. And that way you're showing that you're like interested in networking or meeting people in this field. Or like even if you do an online webinar, like you join a webinar, an info session, you can share that you did that and like how you like maybe top 3 takeaways. I've done stuff like that. Um, that was the second half of your question, right? The first half of your question was like, what kinds of things do you post on LinkedIn?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I would do if I like wasn't trying to be obvious, super obvious that I was looking. If I am just trying to grow my brand and like share that I'm looking and actively needing support from my network. A couple things I mentioned earlier, like sharing other people's success stories, like reposting if someone else is looking for like if I'm in sales or looking for sales and I've got a friend now that is looking for marketing or looking for product design or looking for engineering or something like that, then I'll reshare their posts and say like, does anyone know any like, and so try to help other people, events that you go to. I hope I'm not being too redundant, but maybe if you watched something or you have like a reflection on something, I think that posting on LinkedIn is like kind of a art and a science because you definitely don't want to be like an everyday, unless you're trying to be like an influencer or something, which there are plenty of LinkedIn influencers. And I think we've all seen like, I stepped outside of my, house today and I saw someone on the sidewalk and they needed this, that, and the other thing. And and I thought to myself, oh, so they're like, there's these inspirational sort of like just walls of text. I don't recommend that. Um, I would recommend like something short and sweet, you know, something that you learned, a photo, like a visual. If you take a photo at an event, like that's going to stop someone. They're going to interact with your post and they're going to be excited that you posted a picture because it's LinkedIn. How many people are posting pictures on LinkedIn? Like never, no one. Um, a video too. I've done a few videos. When I was taking 1.5s, I totally forgot to mention this. I took a course and it was called 1.5 Academy. And I learned a lot in the course. And so I did like a couple videos of just things I was learning. And they were like probably too long. Like I think over a minute is long for LinkedIn. So maybe making like a couple videos, talking to your network about something that's relevant in the industry could be a way. Maybe one or two videos could be a way to engage.
Definitely. I remember your videos. I really liked them. And yeah, I think again, the key here is to like, just do it. Like you have absolutely nothing to lose. And I think a lot of people get anxious to post about climate if they're new to climate because it's like, I'm not an expert, but like learning from other people who aren't experts is honestly easier. Like I probably could relate to Laurel way more than I could expert in carbon removal because I too don't know too much about carbon removal. So if Laurel was posting about, I'm just assuming carbon removal, but if Laurel was posting about that, I could learn from her and alongside her. And then it's far less intimidating for me than it would be to go to this other scientist. So I think the key is just do it. Like you have nothing to lose. There's no harm in reaching out. There's no harm in posting what you're learning, putting yourself out there to your network. Definitely agree with all of that. I think, yeah, I saw it and I thought it was great. So I think that's key. The only thing that I'll add to your first section about if you don't want to announce that you're getting a job. And so much of networking is building your brand. But you're right. If you already have a job and you don't want your employer to know and you're not in climate, it's probably not a great idea to be posting climate this, climate that, because they're going to get a little bit suspicious. So that's when you rely on outbound. So if you are open about your job, like inbound networking is great. You can build your brand, you can make those videos Laurel's talking about. People are going to come to you. It's going to be easier. But if you're keeping it a little bit more secret, that's when you really do the outbound. So that's going to be joining the Slack groups, messaging people directly, kind of just you are doing all the outreach as opposed to it coming to you. On LinkedIn, though, like you can still say open to work. There's two options when you edit your profile. One can be like that green hashtag banner that says, I'm open to work. Everyone reach out to me. Or one is just internal. So like there's nothing external on your profile. It just tells hiring managers and recruiters that you're open to work. So I would do that. But yeah, definitely I think you covered it really, really well there. Laurel, thank you for that. The next question that we have in the chat is, can you talk about what a typical day or week looks like for you?
Yeah, sure. If it wasn't like against company policy, I would just share my calendar and like show you, but it's probably not allowed because then my company probably wouldn't like that very much. So basically a week in my current role is intro calls. So calls that whether I set them up or the sales development rep that I work with set them up, but I have like intro calls for just to see if there's an opportunity to help them and sell our tech to them. Demos to show our technology to prospects. Internal meetings, like forecasting calls with my boss and team, as well as like the larger, wider team that includes like other departments to understand what's being forecasted to prepare for like supporting those sales. Product calls. So like as a salesperson, knowing what product is working on and what enhancements we need or what is coming down in the way of a software update, knowing about those things. One-on-ones with managers, with SDRs that I work with, and internal time blocks as well. If I know I have to do a proposal or something like that. Syncs with customers, like syncs, monthly syncs, or if we're in a launch phase, like maybe a weekly sync. One last one would be like maybe partner calls. Like, so if I'm meeting with a partner, then like a partner technology company that we partner with to go to market together, then might be a call with them. And I try to leave room, Friday afternoons to like not, or, Monday mornings to just kind of like get the emailing bulk work done and stuff like that. But I could probably be better about my time management. So if anyone has any tips, let me know.
Yeah. Shouldn't we, can't we all be better about time management? I've tried the calendar blocking. It's hard. Things come up and definitely. But yeah, I think that was awesome and it added a lot more context to what your job looks like and kind of how that could differ from traditional industries and all of that as well. So thanks for sharing that. If anyone has any final questions, again, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. But I think that was all that were asked. So I can ask a few more questions while we wait for more to come in. But again, just as a last call, we have like 5 more minutes or so. So if you have any questions for Laurel, drop them in the chat or raise your hand and we can get those answered. Another question I have for you, Laurel, is when you were going about your job search and networking, were you going up against companies or were you talking to companies that didn't have jobs posted, or were you strictly talking to companies that had jobs posted or you thought they were going to be hiring? Like, was there any strategy where you were trying to create a job, or did you try to employ any of those tactics?
Yes, I was like, oh, that seems like a really good company. Like I'd like to work there, but they're not hiring or they don't have like an open role. But there's other account execs talking about titles. Like there's other like salespeople that work there. So like I want to talk to them about how they like their job, or I want to find someone that knows someone that works at that company to like try to just get any call going with the company. It's kind of similar to just prospecting. It's like, how can we get our foot in the door? And create an opportunity for ourselves and get them thinking about, are they going to expand their sales, force? Sometimes it worked in the sense that like they told me about the fact that they might be opening up a role in like a couple of like maybe next quarter or something like that. Sometimes it didn't, and there was just like no hiring freeze. But all that being said, like it was still good experience to meet people at the company and like ask them about how they liked it and if it was as glamorous as it seemed from the outside. And the other thing to remember is like some of these companies are going to market with a product that may or may not have a product market fit yet. And like for me, I was looking at where I was in my career and I really wanted to find a company that had a clear product market fit. So rather than like maybe a Series A company where they might not even really have a go-to-market motion defined yet, and like they might be really just scraping to get like first, couple of clients. And I wasn't looking for that so much as something later stage or even middle, like still startup, but like more product market defined. So if you find companies that have a salesperson, at least for me, that was like a good sign where like they have someone does this job already there. So like for me, that was a good, marker to try to wedge in and see if they're going to hire more. And ask them how the sales is, how easy or difficult or is sales at this company? Like, do they have a viable, like, does their product actually help the customer base and such?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And I think this is something that's again overlooked in a lot of job searches is okay, I figured out what job types I'm interested in. I figured out what climate verticals I'm interested in. And now I'm just gonna start going to companies. And a lot of times people forget to look at stage. And when you're thinking of really early stage technical products, they're not hiring salespeople until they have something, as you said, Laurel, that they can sell. At first they're hiring their engineers, they're hiring their product people, they're building this thing out. So if you're in sales, it's probably advantageous to like look at later stage companies, do exactly what Laurel said. Do they have a salesperson? Are they actively selling this product? And if so, then that's probably a good marker that they're going to hire more. That being said, if you want to come in, if you want to be the first salesperson, there's definitely opportunities out there, but just like have conversations, talk to people in the C-suite, figure out from those conversations, do they have a good roadmap? Is this job going to be doable? And then start having those conversations. But yeah, I think that's a great point is like, if you're in a supporting role, look for later stage companies that have money, that already have some clients that have traction, and then it's going to be a lot easier for you in that journey. Definitely.
Yeah, you're gonna just be better, depending on your skill set, like me, depending on like, have you built out a sales team before or not? Like, you're gonna be in a much more comfortable situation if you find what is going to fit where you're at. I know that was like a long bout way of saying what you just said, but I
No,
agree.
definitely. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier is like transferable skills. Like if you in a previous industry, if you have built out sales teams, like then target those companies where you can sell that ability to build out their sales teams. They're going to want that. It's going to be a win-win for both. Whereas if you were only an SDR at another company, probably not going to be the best opportunity for you to be the first sales hire because that's hard for you. That's a lot of pressure on you. And then also maybe for them too. So be realistic, but then also put yourself out there. You have nothing to lose at the same time.
First sales hires, I'll just say this. I had a couple interviews for them. It takes a certain type of person to want to be that, first SDR or first AE at a company. And maybe that's you. Like you are such a valuable commodity because like that is not an easy job. And versus someone that's like, I'd rather not necessarily be plugged into the machine, but like give myself, you know, more to go off of, or, so it just depends on like what you prefer.
Definitely. Cool. We have two more questions that just entered the chat really quickly. So I know we're almost at time, but we'll touch on them pretty quickly if we can, Laurel. First is would love to hear your feedback on 1.5.
Yeah. So I was not, so I came into it also like looked at Terra Do, looked at OPF, looked at a couple like that. OPF, there are a lot of differences. OPF was like shorter, more niche, built to like sort of refine a sustainability consultant skill set versus Taradu, which is like more broad, covers more types of sectors of climate and like 12 weeks as opposed to 6 weeks unless they change things. I was able to get a scholarship through OPF, so that helped. I was unemployed, dog sitting. So I was like, can you help me out a little bit? I also felt like the people I spoke with, I spoke with different people at the that took the different programs, links, asked them how they liked it. So that helped, like even over Messenger, like, or LinkedIn. Did you take both? Did you like one or the other? Because if you look on LinkedIn, people will post when they like graduate the program. So you can like just message them and say, did you like it? And stuff like that. Um, Personally, if you're looking to do that to like get a job, I don't think that there's a direct correlation unless it's like OPF and you're really like trying to be a sustainability consultant. Like that could be actually the thing that lifts you to the next level. If you come from like a consulting background or something like that. But use it more as like a networking opportunity and a learning opportunity, in my opinion. Don't expect them to like help you get a job because they're probably not going to do that.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's a great summary. I always say that too, is use it to learn. Don't go into the expectation of getting a job, but helpful to give you the baseline knowledge. And then quickly in the last minute that we have, I want to be conscious of everyone's time. But how important did you feel demonstrating industry experience knowledge? How important was showing that industry experience and knowledge in your job search?
I think that it was an obvious objection in any interview process, like, why are you interested in this at this company? Why are you interested in this industry? And so that's a chance to handle that objection, tell your story, um, share your motivation. I wasn't trying to like pull the wool over anyone's eyes and be like, actually, this one AP science, environmental science course I did in high school is like really like I, know so much and like this, that, and the thing. Like I wasn't trying to fool anyone. I was like really honest about my experience thus far and like what I was looking to gain. So I did have some people say like, you don't have climate SaaS sales experience. And I was like, well, 5%, not even, no, like 0.5% of people have that. Like that's so niche. And it's like, again, what Natalie said, it's such a nascent space. So like that objection to me is BS. Because if you can sell something, you can sell something. And yeah, of course it helps if you have the background, but not that's just more rare in this field. So unless you're coming from some other sector of the field, right? Like, so I think it's just about handling the objection and like showing that you still have the chops to do the job based on XYZ from your previous jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was a great way to end things is you don't need the experience, you need the passion. You need to be able to convey that you can do it. And statistically, it's impossible to require everyone to have climate experience. So even if it's listed, it's simply a wish list on the job description. So still apply, still have these conversations. There's a job for you, even if you don't have that tangible experience. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you learned something from Laurel. As always, I did, and I really appreciate you, Laurel, so much and all your insights and your time. So thank you, everybody. I will send out an email with the recording and then everyone's LinkedIn's that they dropped. So thank you again, and hopefully to see you at some of our future events.
Yes, good luck, everyone. And thank you so much for having me and really like sending the best energy your way. It's not an easy time and it's not an easy thing. So sending all my good vibes your way.
Likewise. Alrighty. Bye, y'all.
Thanks.
Happy Tuesday. Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Bye.